Hello guys, this is Mr. Creighton. Sorry I can't be there. My wife is either in labor or has already had our son. We are finishing up the lecture from yesterday. Yesterday, you guys' homework was to take a look at AAINM and try and figure out what it means. Remember, we're learning about the Great War, World War I. So, what AAINM, an easier way to remember that, is mania. We're looking at the causes of World War I. The first letter, M, stands for militarism, which is the policy of glorifying military power and keeping a standing army always prepared for war. There's a few different factors with this. So under the category of militarism, the first is glorification of the military. Glorification of the military helped feed the arms race, which is never a good thing. The belief with the European powers was to be truly great, you needed to have a powerful military. So imagine you're France and Germany and you don't like each other. You see your rival building up their military, you're going to feel like you need to do the same thing to keep up. Another aspect of glorification of the military is that they romanticized war. They believed that it was very glorious and that you had a lot of honor to go out there and to serve your country. They never realized that the horrors and terrors that were actually involved with war. The fact that there's a good chance either you were going to or someone you knew was going to die. So they didn't really view it that way. And another aspect of glorification of the military is the concept of quickly mobilizing. Each country developed a highly detailed plan to mobilize their country and mobilize their units. This way, if war did end up breaking out, they would be able to counter very, very quickly, or they'd be able to invade someone incredibly quickly. So again, the M stands for militarism. Next, we're going to look at the first A. The first A stands for alliances. Alliances is one of the main reasons why World War I started. There was major distrust amongst the European nations. There are two major alliances to pay attention to. Originally, you have the Triple Alliance. This all started back with Bismarck. Remember, Otto von Bismarck was the Iron Chancellor of Prussia. Prussia turned into Germany. Bismarck knew that France would long to avenge its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War. And so he created the Triple Alliance between Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. That was in 1882. However, the alliance you need to know is the Dual Alliance between Germany and Austria-Hungary. This was signed earlier than the Triple Alliance, 1879. However, when war erupted, in 1914, Germany and Austria-Hungary were known as the Central Powers. Italy, who was a part of the Triple Alliance, remained neutral until the end, and they actually joined the Allies. So the Central Powers are the first alliance you need to know about. Again, Central Powers with Germany and Austria-Hungary. The other alliance you need to know about is the Triple Entente. The Triple Entente is Britain, France, and Russia. In 1893, France and Russia formed a formal alliance. Then in 1904, France and Britain signed an entente. And the question you guys might all be having is, what is an entente? An entente is very similar to an alliance. However, it is a non-binding agreement to follow common policies. Pretty much, these countries signed an entente agreeing to not formally be allies, but because they're the democracies and they had a lot of common policies, they pretty much were allies. It's not as formal as a treaty. So Britain signed an entente with Russia, and they became known as the Allies. Germany also had an alliance with the Ottoman Empire, which is a key alliance you need to know about. And Britain and Japan actually grew close together and had an alliance. So that was for the first A, alliances. Now we're going to take a look at the N. The N stands for nationalism. We've talked a lot in the past in this class about how Germany and France didn't like each other. Well, Germany and England ended up being rivals as well for different reasons. Germany viewed England as a competition. They were competitive in almost everything they did. So Germany was the newest power, so they felt like they didn't have a lot of respect. They were growing into an economic and military powerhouse. Remember, the Industrial Revolution began in Britain, so Britain was one of the most industrialized and powerful nations for a long time. However, based on their geography and the fact that it's a small island, they don't have many natural resources. That's why Britain was able to go out and colonize a lot of the world, because they knew they needed to have resources. Germany, on the other hand, had a lot of natural resources. So they didn't have to go out and gather these resources. They had it at hand. So Germany believed that Britain and really none of the older European nations gave them any respect. England, on the other hand, they felt threatened by Germany. Again, England was at top of the food chain. They were one of the most powerful and economically strong countries in the world at the time, and Germany was coming on very, very strong. Nationalism was also strong in both Germany and France. Germany was proud of their military power and their industrial leadership. The fact that they hadn't been around that long as a new country, again, we're talking about Germany, not Prussia, they were proud that they were one of the leaders of industry and that their military was so strong. France was bitter over their defeat in the Franco-Prussian War, so that helped to unify France and have a lot of nationalism in that regard. Another concept with nationalism is pan-Slavism. Russia is considered a Slavic country, and because they were the largest, most powerful Slavic country, they believed it was their job to be the big brother towards other Slavic countries. And so whenever there was any issues in Serbia, countries like that, Russia felt like it was their job to actually support them and pretty much just support them. Nationalism impacted the old multinational empires in a few different ways. The first multinational empire is the Ottomans. So Ottoman Turkey was worried that Serbia would become strong and take territory away from them. So they were worried about nationalism in that regard. Austria-Hungary was worried about rebellion. If the smaller people groups in Austria and Hungary realized that they would be able to, or not realized, if they witnessed other people groups from the Ottoman Empire taking territory away and creating their own country, they figured their own people would be able to rebel. So that was the N, which is nationalism. Now we're going to take a look at the I. The I stands for imperialism. So in 1905 and 1911, competition for colonies almost brought war to France and Germany. Keep touching on this. France and Germany did not like each other for a very long time. When there were treaties, when war wasn't happening, there was still distrust between the two countries, and they still competed in almost everything they did. So all this led to international tensions. With these international tensions, nations began to build up armies and navies. As I mentioned earlier, if you've got a rival and their army is stronger than yours, you're going to build up your army in an arms race trying to equal their army or make yours better. In addition to that, there's a naval rivalry between Germany and Britain. Britain has had the strongest navy in the world for centuries up until this point. Reason for that, England is an island, and the navy is the easiest way for them to protect themselves. Finally, for mania, we talked about the M, which is militarism, the first A, which is alliances, the N is nationalism, and the I is imperialism. The last A stands for assassination. So with the assassination, the Baltic states, Serbia included, they attacked Turkey and took some territory from Turkey. The Balkan states ended up fighting amongst themselves over the spoils of war, which led to them being nicknamed the powder keg of Europe, because powder keg is a giant keg full of gunpowder. It's very, very fragile, very ready to just explode. One little spark can set it off. So what ended up happening is in Sarajevo, Bosnia, Archduke Francis Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary wanted to go down there and visit. Serbia is technically a part of Austria-Hungary's empire. However, in Serbia, there's a lot of Slavic people that wanted to create their own country. And so the Black Hand, also known as Unity or Death, they were a terrorist organization. What they wanted, they warned the Archduke, if you come down here, we are going to kill you. So the Archduke does what any royal person does and completely ignores it. And he went down there with his wife. The Archduke and his wife, they were driving through the city in an open car, pretty much a convertible, and Gavrilo Princip walked out, fired 2 shots into the car, killing the Archduke and his wife, Sophia. This made Francis Joseph very upset. Francis Joseph was Franz Ferdinand's uncle. Francis Joseph was also the emperor of Austria-Hungary. So he was upset, but he was still reluctant to go to war against Serbia. However, Germany had given Austria a blank check. What I mean by that is it's an unconditional support no matter what the cost is. Germany wanted Austria to go to war because Germany wanted the spoils of war. So Austria gave Serbia an ultimatum. What they said was you need to do a few different things, and if you don't do our demands, you will go to war with us. Some of the demands: Serbia must end all anti-Austrian ideas in Serbia. They have to punish any Serbian official involved in the murder plot of Francis Ferdinand. It must allow Austria to join in the investigation as well. Serbia agreed to most, but not all of the terms of Austria's ultimatum. Because of this, Austria declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914. So Austria declares war on Serbia. Russia and France back Serbia. So after Austria declares war, Serbia, again a Slavic country, turns to its ally, Russia. Russia, of course, helps Serbia. So on August 1st, Germany responds by declaring war on Russia. Russia then turns to its ally in France and asks France to help join them in their war against Russia. Germany demanded that France keep out of the conflict, and France refused. Germany then declared war on France. Britain and Italy were able to stay neutral up until this point. However, something known as the Schlieffen Plan came to be. If you notice, Germany is in between Russia and France. Alfred Schlieffen knew that if Germany ever went to war, potentially they could have a 2-front war. A front is the battleground between 2 different areas. So the Eastern Front would be between Germany and Russia, and the Western Front would be between Germany and France. To combat this, Alfred Schlieffen came up with a plan where Germany would take their army through Belgium, which is between France and Germany, and circle back around the troops and try and attack and take Paris, France, quickly. They believed by doing that, moving fast, it would take Russia too long to mobilize. Germany would be able to beat France, take out the Western Front, and then go and focus on the Eastern Front. However, a lot of the European countries, like Italy and Britain, had signed an agreement with Belgium saying that Belgium would stay neutral throughout the war. So when Germany invaded Belgium to get to France, that really upset England, pulled England into it, and Italy ended up joining England as well. So there's a lot of different factors that go into what caused World War I. I want you guys to remember mania. That helps you guys to remember militarism, alliances, nationalism, imperialism, and the assassination. So many European countries were troubled by a lot of domestic problems that were going on. And so being able to declare war and focus on another country, consider them to be an enemy, that brought temporary relief from these internal divisions. Countries on both sides of the war emphasized that their countries were fighting for justice and a better world. This isn't what students or people typically think with World War II, where it's the Nazis are trying to take over the world and they're evil, and the Allies have to fight them to stop Hitler. This is completely different from that. Like I said, both sides were emphasizing that their countries were trying to do what was best for the world. Thank you for listening.